This is a test for the Blayney Shire Council meeting for November. The meeting will start in 1 minute's time. Good evening and welcome to the November meeting of Blayney Shire Council, with the time being 6:01. This council meeting will commence. This council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being live streamed and recorded. Please ensure that Can we swap mics? Sorry, it was off. I'm not quite sure where I got to, but I'll start with acknowledgement of country. Blayney Shire Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri people and recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of Aboriginal people in this land. Council celebrates the diversity of Aboriginal people and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of the Blayney Shire. As all councillors are here, so there's no apologies or applications for video link. General Manager, do we have any declarations of interest? So actually I should read the disclosures. Sorry, my mouse is not keeping pace. Disclosures of interest. Councillors are reminded of their oath or affirmation of office made under the Section 233 of the Local Government Act and their obligations under the Council's Code of Conduct to disclose and appropriately manage conflicts of interest. General Manager, are there any disclosures of interest by councillors or staff?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I've received no disclosures, but a disclosure can still be made at any time during the meeting.
Thank you, General Manager. Now to the public forum, and are there any public forum speakers?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there is one public forum speaker.
And I believe David Anderson is the one speaker, so I'd like to call David Anderson forward to speak. I assume Mr Anderson's microphone is on? Yes.
Yep. Green light.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
So you have 5 minutes to speak, and I will try and give you a tap at 4 minute mark. And you're talking about DA 2024/0063. That's a detached dual occupancy and 2-lot subdivision, 24 Knox Place in Millthorpe. Over to you, Mr Anderson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I appreciate the chance to come and speak to you tonight. My partner Ellie and I live 59 Glenorrey Road, which is immediately to the east of the Knox Place subdivision. We wrote the submission opposing the subdivision of 24 Knox Place. I'd just like to step back first up to page 54 in your business paper, an extract from the development assessment, noting that the smaller blocks that already existed in the village, and I'll read it. Despite concerns regarding the density of the proposed subdivision, this is the original one, it should be noted that around Pearce, Pilcher, Crowson and Church Street there are some small blocks. Those blocks, or the houses on those blocks, are all original old, let's say 19th century, early 20th century houses. The village at the time was completely different to what it is now. The council approved the subdivision that's there at the moment, noting those concerns there, but I don't think it was acknowledged at the time that there was such a difference in the type of houses, the age of houses, the heritage value of those houses in the CBD, if we can call it that, of Millthorpe. Yes, I found a couple. 9 and 11 Pilcher Street look to be about 400 metres. 19 Pilcher Street looks to be about 300 metres. But they are beautiful old weatherboard houses that really do fit the character of the village. And further down the bottom of the page 54, in this regard it is noted the current layout is recommended. So the current layout of the existing subdivision is recommended. We're now a couple of short years down the track from that approval being granted for that subdivision, and we're now moving on from that current layout. So this is one of the concerns that Ellie and I, Ellie and I had about it. There's a comment on the bottom of page 55 that only a minimal level of noticeability from a limited number of general brackets not significant vantage points. So the council's acknowledging that there will be visibility from various places around town, not significant points granted, but certainly our place. We would welcome any of you that would like to come out and visit to our place to have a look at how it's going to impact us from our position. Another concern we had, page 57 now. This is in reference to one of our points that we raised in our submission about a variation to the side boundary setbacks. Now it's been assessed and considered appropriate. It gives us a bit of concern that there are black and white rules that can be assessed and changed if there's some mitigating factor somewhere else. We're not really convinced or sure of what other rules might be changed. We are worried that once that one happens, there might be another one, and as I say, we don't know what those changes might be, what those changes to rules might be. We have concerns about the lack of greenery down there. Already it's a small to medium-sized blocks. There's no established greenery within the subdivision other than what was in the original the Pines building that's still there, and around the subdivision. Putting another house on a block, or subdividing a block and putting another house on two smaller blocks, there'll be even less chance for any more greenery, more reflected heat from hard concrete surfaces, more reflected light if, say, it's a galvanised or a light coloured roof. 1
minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I suppose we're asking you, I understand you are making a decision tonight, but we're asking you to defer that decision if possible. And as I said earlier, if you're all welcome to come out to our place and have a look and just see what the impacts might be, and we hope that you can give this due consideration, and hopefully the outcome is in our favour. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Now, councillors, under our meeting code, you can ask a question as long as it's on the topic. Do any councillors have any questions of Mr. Anderson? There doesn't appear to be any, so thank you, Dave Anderson, for attending this evening and presenting to council. And that matter is scheduled for item number 8
Wonderful.
in our business
Thank you.
paper.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, councillors, there is one mayoral minute, which was a late report. So it's item number 9 in the business paper. We'll bring forward as mayoral minutes of the first items of business. There's a recommendation there in 3 parts with regard, so this is a mayoral minute on environmental planning and assessment amendment, the Planning System Reforms Bill 2025 impacts on Blayney Shire Council. This bill was passed last week in State Parliament. I think it was on Tuesday. Given it is a mayoral minute, I will move it from the chair and there is no requirement for a seconder. So councillors, there's three parts to the recommendation. One, to note recent amendments to the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, which have been passed by the New South Wales Parliament. Number two, note one of the amendments removes planning determination powers from local government in regional New South Wales to a new local planning panel. And number three, write to the Minister for Planning requesting the New South Wales Government reconsider its decision to remove planning approval functions away from local elected members to representatives to in regional New South Wales. So, councillors, there is a very long explanation there. We found out, or I found out about it on Friday at Country Mayors Association, which was, funnily enough, in Macquarie Street in Parliament House, in the amphitheatre or theatre underneath the Parliament. And it will have considerable impacts on our ability. So how it's going to work, and for the community and any of our residents that are watching, there will be two panels constructed. Firstly, this local planning panel, and there will still be a regional planning panel. So for bigger items, and generally during a council term there may be 2 or 3 items that are referred to that regional planning panel. It's above a certain amount of money, but most of the determinations will come from this local planning panel. Council, as the way it's stated, and we're still waiting for more information from the state government, so it's not actually enacted at this point in time. I don't think, General Manager, we have a date yet for enactment.
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's not gazetted as yet, so whilst it's through Parliament, it hasn't been gazetted as yet, no.
So the Governor hasn't signed off on it as yet, but even then it may be a start date of January 1st, February 1st or some particular date.
Correct.
So we will have a little bit of time for council staff to adjust. So the items that council staff can't do under delegation will come to this local planning panel. There will be a representative from the community. The council gets to choose that representative, but it cannot be a councillor. It has to be a community member, so I assume, General Manager, we'd probably look at calling for someone, but again, there's a lot of information we don't know as yet.
Correct, Mr Mayor. Yeah, until we get further information, we are a little bit limited with what we have.
As well as some other people that are appointed outside of the community that may, and we may share a local planning panel, or we may have one ourselves, yet to be determined. There's a lot of information,
Yep,
from what I understand, that hasn't been provided. So, as I said, this went through State Parliament under bipartisan support, so both sides of the House supported the changes in legislation, and it was, I believe, the reason given to remove planning powers was because of concerns from ICAC about decisions across the state, and that local councillors shouldn't be able to make a determination. Now in Sydney, this has been enacted for, I think it's about 8 or 10 years, that, and in the Blue Mountains, because it's on the fringe, also has the same rules that we're about to go into, where they have a local planning panel. So we'll remove any assessment obligations under the governing body, so the staff will still assess development applications, but the governing body will not make a decision on ones that are more controversial or don't quite meet the DCP or LEP or other provisions. This independent local planning panel will make those decisions. So tonight may be, and I don't know whether there is a planning item to come up in December, but maybe one of the last or the last planning decisions this council actually makes in planning determinations. I think that's a quick summary. There is a long report there. There are a couple of media releases. Local Government New South Wales does have a number of concerns, not just about this. There are a number noted in their business paper, but this will have the biggest impact on this council, because we will no longer be able to make any decisions about planning matters at a local level outside of the regional planning panel, and we do have a councillor and an alternate available for that regional planning panel if the councillor is unavailable. And I may have a discussion with the General Manager about that regional planning panel to see, given that one of our other delegate to that regional planning panel has left Cabon Council, and so we have to actually look at appointing someone else to that regional planning panel as well. But that's nothing to do with these changes. That's just a change in personnel with our delegates within the regional planning panel. So as I mentioned, Local Government New South Wales has highlighted a number of concerns, and they are taking them up with the Minister, so that those concerns are listed in the report. But councillors, do you have any questions or comments? So I'll start with Councillor Scott, who raised a hand first.
Yep.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a chance to have a look at the amendment that was put through, and on my basic reading of it, it would appear to me that the state government's again interfering in local business. Instead of improving efficiency, it is simply creating yet another unnecessary hurdle for people in our community. This council is fortunate in that we have exceptionally skilled and knowledgeable staff who, in the planning department, professionals who have already streamlined the DA processing for matters that they can handle under their delegation, and who, with their expertise, which is invaluable to us, and they ensure that planning decisions that come before us, that we're well informed of, and are handled efficiently, effectively and responsibly in our area. The amendment doesn't remove their process. It does, however, introduce significant delays on matters that involve minor issues but still need to come before this council, and council can usually deal with those fairly promptly at the next council meeting. This, the way it's set out, who knows what the delays will be by how often this panel will sit. My theory with this is we really need to make sure our voice is heard on it. Our community has elected us to make decisions regarding local issues. Continued intervention from the state government doesn't reflect any understanding of the unique circumstances in country communities. We've got people in Sydney making decisions regarding planning issues out here. They have no understanding on what our services can handle, and this yet again is just going to create further delays and impact everyone in this community.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. And one other thing, we don't know yet how much it's actually going to cost the council to actually have this another panel to make those determinations. So there are a lot of unknowns. We're waiting for more information. I think Councillor Newstead, unless Councillor Scott...
I was only going to further to what I was saying. We can even see tonight, we've already got a matter where we've got members of the community who can come speak to us. They can offer for us to come out and have a look at things. Whereas with these panels, we don't know where they're going to be located exactly and what access community members are going to have to those. So it may strangle out their voices as well.
A lot of unknowns. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a comment and a question. First of all, I've worked for the Department of Planning for a couple of years, and I had to reread this to make sure I interpreted it right. I didn't, but you have interpreted it correctly for me. Thank you very much for being able to plough through it and encapsulate it in a small couple of sentences. The question I have is, with the local government conference coming up, is this on the agenda? Or is this coming from left of field?
So I believe you could potentially put up a late notice, as in a late motion. So I think that is highly possible that something will come from the floor. And as we've seen there with the media release from Local Government New South Wales, so that's the organisation that's having the conference at the end of this week and early next week. Well, it's early next week, given it's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. that they've already stated their position. But as I said, it was bipartisan support that this legislation went through last Tuesday, I think it was. And at country mayors, we were all quite in shock when one of the councillors stood up towards the end of country mayors and said, councillors, mayors, please be aware, this has happened. And we're all sort of scrambling to try and find out more information, and we've been trying to piece together, and I read the amendments to the legislation, and in this mayoral minute I've actually inserted them into so you actually see here the new legislation as opposed to as in amendments and the old legislation. I've tried, fingers crossed it's 100% correct. It took me a fair while to actually insert every change that was suggested with regard to the local planning panel. So it's highly possible, Councillor Johnston, that it will come up in some form. I don't know in what way, but I think you can, if they can get through all the business paper, but there may be an urgency motion put up at some stage about this matter, because most of the mayors were pretty upset when we found out about it, and there was about 80 mayors in the room, something like that, General Manager?
Oh, three Mr. Mayor, I think there's 92 members of country mayors. I'm not sure how many were there, but if you recall, I was just going to add, there was a late motion passed by country mayors because regional councils are the biggest one affected by this change. It's already in Sydney. There is some refinement, but it is regional councils where this shifts for the first time. For example, item 8 would go to the panel rather than here. So that's the tangible change. So that country mayors have passed a late motion seeking clarification and to overturn this decision. I'm not sure how they'll go given it's through the Parliament.
A further question, Mr. Mayor, in regard to the conference, is any government representatives going to be there, like the Minister or the Premier?
So Office of Local Government will be there. So as far as I'm aware, from what I've seen in correspondence, Brett Whitworth, but this is a planning, so it's the Department of Planning, it's not the Office of Local Government.
Yep.
But they will probably have to enact it, or as in it'll come through then, won't it, Mr. General Manager?
Yep.
So the directive will come through from the Department of Planning that these are the new rules. And it was interesting, Blue Mountains is in Country Mayors, and the Mayor of Blue Mountains was there at Country Mayors, and he said, you don't want this, you seriously don't want it. It just takes so much away local input from local councils. We've experienced it firsthand, and you really don't want to have this take place. But sorry, do you have anything further?
And the only other comment I want to reinforce what Councillor Scott said, that like the item tonight, Mr. Anderson wouldn't have the opportunity. I can't see how this is going to be helpful at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Newstead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to get it clear in my head, so now any planning matter where there's a submission against it is put to council, it doesn't come to the councillors. So, like Councillor Scott said, how often are this planning panel going to meet? Will the public get an opportunity to come and speak to that planning panel? It's just like the code of meeting practice, everything about transparency, but they're making it worse. So anyway, I suppose as
I'll answer by trying to say maybe we should go and have a look at Blue Mountains and see, and maybe through the General Manager to the Director of Planning, if he could sort of have a look at how it operates and come back to councillors with some feedback so that we actually know how the Blue Mountains, because Blue Mountains was put up as the case study because they're in between. General Manager, do you have any other sort of insights?
Through Mr. Mayor, I was just going to add, I'd probably wait until Department of Planning actually come out with the guidance, because it's a whole new piece of legislation, so there has been tweaks even to how Blue Mountains currently operate. So Department of Planning will come out with guidance on how it's going to operate. I'd wait until that so we can have a look exactly at what it contains.
But we will, if this resolution is passed tonight, we will send a letter off expressing our concerns about the changes, which have, but the hassle is both houses of New South Wales Parliament have, I don't know if it was unanimous, but both sides of, so the Liberal National Coalition and the Labor Party both passed the legislation, so there was no opposition there. I don't know if any of the crossbenchers voted against it, but as in most politicians in Parliament voted in favour of it, so it's not as though it was very, very close and the government might look at making changes. That's my analysis of it, that the government has, as in Mr Speakman, the opposition leader, did address country mayors. He didn't actually talk about this, but as in that was one of the things that was highlighted. We also at the joint organisation heard from the Premier, Chris Minns, and he was highlighting about the bipartisan support to some of the motions, and I think this was one he was trying to get bipartisan support in something else as well. But he did actually, just as a side issue, also ask for council support in trying to get more money out of the Commonwealth. Not every council in the room, so there was 11 councillors in the joint organisation meeting with the Premier, and all of them were, was the Premier, wasn't it? Or no? Premier was at country mayors. So the Premier at country mayors with up to 90, there was probably about 70 country mayors there, was also asking for country mayors to help in getting money out of the Commonwealth government, because the state, he's saying, has been well shortchanged, and he did provide some evidence of how much we're shortchanged, particularly on GST funding, when Victoria gets over $1 for every dollar they contribute, and New South Wales is down, I think, in the low 80s or somewhere around that. So, yeah, the Premier was trying to get some support from country mayors, but on this matter, I don't think he would have any support from country mayors. Gentlemen, did you have anything else to add?
We're a bit off topic.
Okay, yes, we're off topic, but so councillors, any other? So Councillor Goswich.
Thanks, Mayor Reynolds. Yeah, my other colleagues have said most of it. I suppose my biggest fear, or not fear, but one of the issues I find is DQ's already under the pump with approving stuff already from the department. They've made cuts to the EPA, and they're now going to throw more into the Department of Planning. So there's going to be no streamlining. It's going to create more bottlenecks, and they're going to have to find more staff. Council can't find staff to do these jobs, some of these jobs. So where are they going to all of a sudden get all these staff people to do it? So that's where I'll just leave that as a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goswich. Any other councillors wish to make a comment about this mayoral minute? If not, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Given that we do have a speaker tonight, I was proposing to move item number 8 up next in the agenda before... Actually, we'll do the minutes first. I think we need to do the minutes and then we'll come to item 8. So, minutes of the previous council meeting held on the 28th of October. There is a recommendation there. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Goswich, Councillor Scott. Councillors, any discussion with regard to the minutes of the previous council meeting? If not, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. I was just checking. There was one that I wanted to give an update, but I may have missed it. We'll move on. So unless any councillor objects, we'll move to item number 8, which is the planning matter, given we have a speaker tonight. So there is a recommendation there for item number 8. It's in 3 parts, and I will read it out as we have people that have spoken on it, or a person that's spoken on it. The recommendation is that council note the submission received in relation to development application 2024.0063. 2, note its decision of the 28th of October to grant development consent to development application 2024.0063 for the erection of a dual occupancy and a 2-lot subdivision at lot 11 DP 1291217, which is 24 Knox Place, Millthorpe, subject to the conditions that are outlined below. And number 3, note that the content of the submission and the revised assessment report attached to the business paper have been duly considered, and council's position in granting development consent subject to the same conditions remains. So do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Goswich has moved that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead? And a reminder, there will be a division when we go to vote on this one. Councillors, would you like to discuss any of the matters, or the Speaker? Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just in relation to this matter, I note the objections that have been put forward to us and the issues brought to light by Mr. Anderson. I will note I did go for a drive this afternoon out to the location and confirm that I was able to see their property from the proposed site, so I can understand that it is something that will be visible from their property. My only comment with that is this is one additional house in that area. I would, from where I was, it would appear that the whole subdivision is visible from their location, and it's not a massive extension of that subdivision, and that there is some greenery down there, and I can understand that it will take time for that to become established greenery, but it looks like there will be some there in time once it has been given time to develop and settle in. But I can understand the concerns that they have.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Any other councillors would like to discuss? Councillor Newstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can see where the people that are against this are coming from. I think probably back when I was on council, when this subdivision was first approved, there probably was a feeling that, you know, that there wouldn't be any subdivisions. Unfortunately, looking at everything that I've been able to read, and, you know, it's pretty hard to knock it back in my opinion. The concerns they have about further subdivisions, yeah, is a concern, but I think we have to take everyone that comes in on its own merit. And having spoken about what we just talked about, that may not be up to us anyway. So, yeah, and I do agree with Councillor Scott that at this point it's only one, and we've got to vote on what the information we have. So, yeah, so we'll leave it to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Newstead. Any other councillors wish to comment on the DA before I comment from the chair? If not, and you might want to turn your microphone off, Councillor Newstead. Thank you, councillors. Look, as I spoke at the last council meeting, that I personally think this subdivision, and this goes back to the original DA, was overdeveloped. There were too many houses put on the subdivision. The council made a determination at that point in time to allow the subdivision on very small lots, and there are quite some large houses. I have been into the subdivision. I've had a look, and similar to Councillor Scott, I do understand and can see that the Mr. Anderson and his partner, Ms. Burdett, would be able to see from their place this extra house, but they would also see one house as it is for a start. My biggest concern is the other blocks that may be able to be subdivided into 2 or 3 lots moving forward, and particularly that the planning powers are being taken away from this council with regard to approving or rejecting applications, and are going to a panel, a local planning panel, and under the DCP it says that this is permissible, that you can go down to 450 square metres if my memory serves me right. So potentially on at least one block there could be 3 houses which actually directly border the said people's lot. So that's my big concern, that while the horse is bolted, what could potentially happen down the track. And I'd really like to highlight, and hopefully if we do have a local planning panel, and if there is another application to subdivide, that we can actually have some input, that we can actually put to the planning panel to say, look, it's potentially going to have a massive impact on the neighbours. When we approved the original subdivision, it was for so many lots, and now this is quite a substantial expansion. So that is my big concern moving forward if we pass this tonight. On the other side, the horse has bolted. There is a subdivision of about 20, or maybe now 21 or 22 houses in that total subdivision. I think one is a stormwater retention basin, but so I think it might be 21 potential houses there at this stage. And so while I really can understand what the Speaker said tonight and empathise with him and his partner, that I will be voting in favour of this approval, but if another application comes in for those blocks which are directly adjoin their rural or semi-rural holding, I will be strongly trying to oppose through whatever mechanisms that we have through council as councillors under this new local planning panel. So I will leave it there, as again we don't know at this stage what, if any, powers we do have, but it does concern me that this may open up the floodgates, and the owner of those other blocks, and I believe it is one owner, may then move to do other potential subdivisions within that subdivision. Councillors, any other comments? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Even though I wasn't on council when this was originally approved, as a citizen of Millthorpe, I put in a submission against what has occurred. And knowing what I know, as we've previously discussed, if we vote down this proposal tonight and reject it, then we will lose in the Environment Court, is my understanding. And so, which is another cost to front the court. And so it's kind of like our hands are tied on this particular matter, and therefore, you know, we're only digging a hole for ourselves if we vote against it and reject it outright, sort of thing. Thank you.
Can I just add, so as in, it's up to your rights, every councillor here, to make a decision one way or the other, but it is important with any planning matter that you actually, if you were going to vote against it, you need to highlight the reasons why you're voting against it, because the staff will have to compile a list of reasons on why you voted against it to put up a defence. Because, again, I can't speak on behalf of the proponent. They may or may not take it to the Land and Environment Court, but given that, by the looks of it, they've invested a fair bit of time and money to get to this stage, that if council rejected it, so we would need a good defence, I suppose you could say, on reasonings why councillors rejected it if 4 councillors here tonight were to vote against the DA. So if you are going to vote against it, as in can you please highlight at this stage why you're voting against it? So if any councillors here are looking at voting against it, we need to actually hear if you want to, it's in the reasons why you may want to vote against this particular proposal, just in case 4 councillors do oppose this recommendation tonight. Councillor Goswich.
Thank you, Mayor Reynolds. It's probably more of a comment. I think I understand the people's concern with this development. I suppose it makes us have to think about item 7, that our future draft development control plan, with what's been said tonight, because we have to then make sure that is right. So when the planning panel, if it does come into effect, that we've got our everything crossed and dotted to make sure exactly what we want. So they have to then follow what the DCP is going to be in the future for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goswich. General Manager, do you have something to say?
Through Mr. Mayor, can I just add a comment? So, councillors, on page 55, and it was referenced tonight by the Speaker, there's wording in italics that we pulled from the original DA assessment report through, and that's the big difference in the assessment report. We sought advice on this, and this one is different in that the other lots that are larger in particular directly border rural land. This one doesn't. It's actually got residential land behind it, and that is the big difference here. The advice originally, when I was the director in assessing the subdivision, was you cannot actually stop, unless you refuse the subdivision outright, a future application being assessed on its merits. You can't put a covenant, you can't put anything in particular to restrict down. That's why this wording was very important as to why they were larger lots, particularly on the outside that adjoin rural land. This particular lot doesn't. There is residential land all around, and that's the delineation which we're putting in the sand, because hopefully if one does come down the track, and we don't know, that will be relied upon to say, no, no more. In relation to the DCP, I'll talk about that when that comes up, but the DCP at the end of the day is a guide. If you meet the DCP, you instantly go through the gates, don't even get notified. It's a guide, so it's not a be-all and end-all that won't create some great document that will protect us forever.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillors, any more discussion with this matter? And Councillor Goswich, you might want to turn your microphone off. Councillors, any more discussion before we go? If not, this requires a division. When I call, can you please raise your hands either for or against? Councillors, for those councillors in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hands. I think it was unanimous, so all 7 councillors have raised their hands, so no one against. So it was carried. Thank you, councillors. We now return to the business paper to item number 2. And there is a recommendation there with regard to report on council's investments as of the 31st of October 2025. Do I have a mover? Councillor Scott and Councillor Newstead. Councillors, any discussions with regard to the financial cash position of the council? Councillor Scott.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had one query, and that was in relation to the summary of investment cash movements. I note there was a term deposit withdrawn, which was the one at the ING Bank. I was just wondering, I noticed it was not reinvested. I was just wondering what the reasoning was behind that one, as it seemed to be the only one that wasn't.
I'll go through the General Manager to the Acting Director of Corporate Services, Tiffany.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's likely, although I couldn't confirm right now, but it's likely that the investment was non-performing in terms of the rate offered going forward. So it would have been withdrawn and then it would have been further invested, although that would have happened after the end of the month.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Newstead.
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Goswich loves me talking about this. I noticed that there's only 2 investments now, or 3 investments, no, 2, because one matured a week ago, that are above 5%, but I'm pretty sure that it'll stay in the 4s for a while. I heard on the news today, I think, that Commonwealth Bank said they didn't anticipate any more interest rate cuts for quite a while, so... And it's been really good because I remember not that long ago where we were in the 1s and below with our interest. So it's certainly helped over the last few years to be getting a decent interest rate on the money that we've had invested. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Newstead. Councillors, any other comments with regard to the investments? And will pipe in, there are 3 investments that are under 4%, and 2 of them are 3.99 and one's 3.96, so very, very close to 4%. But by the looks of it, some of the current investments or the latest investments are above 4% again, so it looks as though the money market is not pricing in any further reductions in interest rates in the near future, so you may well be right on what has been publicly said by one of the banks. Councillors, any other discussion? If not, all in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Councillors, item number 3, and Councillor Newstead, your microphone's on again. Quarterly Budget Review Statement, September 2025. Do I have a mover for the 3 parts to the recommendation? Councillor Goswich has moved that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hutchings. Councillors, any comments or discussion with regard to the Quarterly Business Review Statement? And the noted changes, the supplementary votes, etc., to make changes. Councillors are quiet. I'll just make one quick comment from the chair. In looking at where we're sitting, a quarter of the way through, we're pretty well close to near to budget, which is great. There's nothing from left field out there at this stage. We're travelling along quite well from the look, and that we're fairly close to the budget. And it's important to note in first quarter we do make some payments for things like insurance, so for the whole year, and I think a couple of other items as well, acting director. So so there's little bits of lump up the front, but overall, yeah, look, we're tracking very, very well. Any further comments or questions with regard to the QBRS? If not, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. To item number 4, attraction and retention of medical professionals locally. There is a recommendation in 2 parts here for a request for a loan by that professional. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Newstead has moved that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goswich has seconded that. Councillors, any discussion on this item? Councillor Scott.
Sorry, I'll be banned here in a moment. I more had a query given the fact that this is a unsecured loan as to why that may be that we don't have at least a caveat or something on the property. And also in relation to the loan document itself, whether there's any room to expand that, as I know there seem to be a few things that could be added in. And
I'll throw to the General Manager to maybe answer part of this, but as far as I know, you don't actually have to use the money. It can be used for any purpose. So it could be buying doctor's chairs or something else, as far as I know, but I'll get the General Manager to explain on why there isn't some form of security.
Through you, Mr Mayor, my understanding, Councillor Scott, and you're probably more experienced in this area than me, but my understanding is because it's not directly related to a property specifically, we can't tie it to be a secured loan. And given the terms are generally 2 years, to do so would not be worth the trouble to do so. I'm happy to take it offline though, and even potentially, if there is some improvements that could be made to the deed, definitely happy to take that offline and look at that.
So do we, if we are going to do that, a question through to the General Manager, do we need to put a dot point 3 that's subject to further changes, or before it's sent off that it's just noted that we may make some fine tuning?
No, that's fine, Mr Mayor. We can just take that offline and have a chat and talk to the Councillor Scott specifically about what she was thinking. Yeah.
Okay. Given that the deed is not public anyway, so
No.
there may be some fine tuning. We did discuss it about a week ago. Councillors, any other questions or comments with regard to this loan for hopefully a GP that's going to move from Canoundra to Blayney, and hopefully going to stay in the Shire for a couple of years, because it's an ongoing issue, and it's not just here in Blayney, with regard to getting GPs to most rural communities across the region. And we are somewhat fortunate in that we have Orange and Bathurst also close by, and a lot of our residents do use GPs in either of those communities. But it's also important that we have GP in Millthorpe or 2, and again in Blayney that we have several GPs. So anything we can do to attract GPs to Blayney Shire is highly valuable. And just to add to Councillor Scott's comments about security, when I first did come onto council back, I think it was 8 years ago, there was a loan to a previous doctor, and the doctor went bankrupt, so there was some of that loan was not paid back because of bankruptcy laws. So it has happened before where there has been a default on the loan. I don't think it was anywhere near this amount of money, but it is a good question to ask though about what sort of security that you can sort of have with regard to the loan that's been asked for. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not familiar with the medical practice in Blayney, so is this an additional doctor or replacing one that's left?
I think it's a replacement, and I have heard that one of the other doctors that works part-time in Blayney is going to relocate early next year. So it's a moving feast, just to keep on. But I don't. Does any councillor know if this is a replacement for an existing doctor, or I think they were down on numbers anyway. So again, I can't. We can take it on notice and come back to you offline, Councillor Johnston. But I would suspect we're not seeing an increase in the number of doctors. I think there's been up to, is it 4 councillors, doctors that we've had in Blayney at different times, or? And it ebbs and flows. Councillor Newstead, do you have an answer?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the number, but I'm pretty sure this is Dr. Padma. I've never been to her, but she's been here for a while now. And there was another doctor here who would have liked to have stayed, but because he's out from Sydney on a rotation thing, he's actually got to move on to Orange, I think. So, but he said he would have liked to have stayed, but unfortunately, the way it works out, he can't. So, thank you.
And I think it's if Dr. Padma has been here for a period of time, that it works. This is the only application, or the first application we've had. So, and I think they're looking to sort of take up residence in Blayney or surrounds. So I assume that's why they've moved to put it. But they've moved from Canowindra, from what I understand. Councillors, any further information or discussion on this recommendation, because it is an unsecured loan to this particular doctor? If not, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Item number 5, Infrastructure Services Monthly Report. There's a recommendation there, including a note of 9,000 is being allocated within the 2025-26 Village Enhancement Program for the Blayney Tennis Courts lighting repairs, as well as to note the report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Newstead and Councillor Hutchings. Councillors, any discussion with regard to this item? Councillor Newstead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you, through the General Manager to the Director, can you tell me, because I was playing tennis last night and they had the lights on, and I noticed on court 4 that there was one light completely missing, but most of the others looked like they were working. Can you, because $17,000 for that seems like quite a bit of money. Not that I'm saying it's not, but do you know what the problems were, Mr. Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe some of the lights are temporary and they're not providing adequate lighting. So we're looking, this proposal repairs all those lights with an LED head, which will provide adequate training lighting.
Councillors, Councillor Dorset.
Yes, look, I might have my wires crossed here, I'm not 100% sure. About 3 o'clock this afternoon there was an item where Paul Toole came on the radio and was promoting grants that are available up to $300,000 for, and he specifically was stressing the use of them for sporting upgrades and things like that. Now, I don't have all the information on it. I only partially heard the item, but I believe they're accepting applications for this from the 24th of November. Is it worth applying for that, preferably than using our funding?
So I'll answer that in a couple of parts. It's the club grants funding, and council is looking at another project to actually put a much larger application for a much larger funding application, but through a village committee. So rather than through council directly. So as in there will be more information moving forward, but and there's also Crown Improvement Funds available at the moment. They close, I think, in the next few days, maybe at the end of this week. Do you know, Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in relation to Councillor Dorset's, the minimum funding amount, we did consider that. The minimum funding amount is $50,000.
Right, okay.
And it would therefore also delay us being able to, by the time they assess the grants, you might not know till March next year. So what we're proposing allows the repairs 50-50 with the local group, and we can address that straight up.
Right, as I said, I wasn't sure, I didn't have all the clarification, but I just wondered if it was something worth investigating, or potentially if it was something a tennis club might apply for. But if that's the guidelines on it and the criteria, fair enough. Thank you.
and also the probability of getting 2 grants up under club grants when they generally, on larger projects, only issue about half a dozen in the state, maybe 8 or 10, as in it would be very unlikely we would get 2 up. And the other project is potentially very much larger than this one. But it's well listened to and well spotted, and I've been looking for every grant opportunity that we potentially can have out there. And as I mentioned, Crown Reserve Improvement Fund grant application is open, and council's looking at that
I
as well
was
at this
hoping that
stage.
we would be all over it, but just in case we weren't, I thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, it's appreciated that you have brought it up, because we're all looking, because there is not much grant funding around. And this will come out of the Village Enhancement Program funds, and we do have a reasonable reserve in the Village Enhancement Program funds. If there are no other comments from councillors, I will make one comment from the Chair. I would like, and I'm not going to put in a point 3, but before the funding is made available, that we actually talk with the tennis club about making access to the 4 southern courts available to the community during daylight hours, which council has been talking about for a long period of time. So if the director could take that on note, but I won't put it in as a recommendation, to ask the tennis club as part of the, as in providing these extra funds, that they seriously consider allowing the opening of those courts that are generally not used unless there are tournaments, because we're talking about the 4 main courts that have the lighting on them. And it would be a valuable resource, because in most of the villages that have tennis courts, they are open and there is no charge, and the gates are just left unlocked for usage. Councillors, any other comments? Councillor Dorset?
Yeah, just further to your comments there, I'm in complete support of that. As you know, it is something that I have been constantly promoting and pushing for, and I personally would like to see it done in time for the next lot of school holidays, the Christmas school holidays. I think it would be quite beneficial to all members of our community, but it's particularly the youth, and I say bring that on.
Thank you, Councillor Dorset. Any other comments? Any other questions on the whole report as opposed to just the tennis courts? If not, I may just ask one through the General Manager to the Director with regard to Hobbies Yards Road. Sorry, Councillor Scott, didn't see that.
Sorry, I just had one question in regards to the repairs at Napier, as to whether there were any other issues other than just the tank that were found, because I know that there were some concerns during the season that it was incredibly wet and did not appear to be draining, whether that tank could have been affecting that, or whether there's suspicion that it may be something else as well.
Through the General Manager to the Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, we suspect all that water that was coming out is actually groundwater, which is consistent with similar complaints we received in 2022 and 2023. But there was no other things found regarding that.
Sorry, the reason I ask is I have played on that field in 2022, 2023, 2024, and it seemed to be this was the first time that we've actually had to fully close the ground and have people not train, not play in a number of years since it has been redeveloped.
Through you, Smith, thank you. We'll look further into that.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Any other questions before I ask my question on Hobbies Yards Road? If not, through the General Manager to the Director, any update on, and I haven't been out there, so maybe there has been the sealing, when the Hobbies Yards Road next section is going to actually be sealed and then line marked down the track?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We're still waiting on an exact sealing date, but it is anticipated to occur before the end of the month.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, any other questions? No other hands, so all in favour of the report? Aye. Against? Carried. Item number 6, minutes of the Blayney Showground Users Group Committee meeting held on the 10th of November 2025. Recommendation there in 3 parts. Do I have a mover? Councillor Scott, do I have a seconder? Councillor Hutchings. Councillors, questions or comments about the meeting? If not, I'll just make one quick comment, and I chaired half the meeting and then Councillor Scott chaired the other half. And I do want to actually commend the staff member, Nikki Smith, with regard to the minutes, because they're quite comprehensive and really explain where each part is. So pass on a thank you to Ms. Smith. With regard to, as in, council is looking for, again, funding opportunities, and the number one priority from most of the users in the meeting, which was held in this room, was with regard to a covered or shed over the yards. So again, it mentions in here talking about pre-DA, so coming and talking with the planning staff, and also with some portable stables again. So it was really highlighted that communication back with the planning staff to start the process, and then to look at what funding grants or opportunities may be out there. So I think it was a good meeting, because the people who attended actually got a better understanding, because there was some misinformation about that council had rejected this shed over the yards for shade, when that wasn't the case. But they didn't understand the process of having to go through and potentially have to put a DA in. So hopefully in the near future that a number of people come and have a chat about those two potential inclusions. And given that under the conditions of the showground, if they are going to do, and I think it's $50,000 Director of Infrastructure, that they have to actually get council approval to. Yes. So, but it was a good meeting, and they're keen to have another meeting in another 6 months to continue their progression. And they seem to be working very well together, which is the other thing that I really noted, as in that the users that attend are really united in what they're trying to achieve to get better outcomes from the showground. Councillor Newstead.
Yeah, sorry, Mr Mayor, I forgot to ask this question. With the fencing around the trotting track, I read here where it says that the Harness Racing New South Wales will not contribute to this project. What happens if the fence isn't replaced and it's just temporary fence, is it at the moment? Can they stop meetings?
I'll throw it through to the Director to explain what's there at the moment, and also what options are there. So through the General Manager to the Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We've been working with both the Trotting Club and their regulator on this. So we've proposed a staged approach for some temporary measures, which we've put in at the moment, and then other, I guess, other stages towards the next few years. Look, it's really on the committee and them to comply there. We can assist wherever we can, and we can assist with grant funding applications, but given it benefits those users, they really need to make sure their risk assessments in undertaking their events take place.
Councillor Newstead.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. The problem with the fence that's already there, is that because people can go through it or something like that? Am I correct in asking that question?
Through the General Manager to the Director.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's mostly to do with the height of the fence does not meet the standard of their racing events.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
And we are looking at funding options to try and see if we can find some funds, but again, no guarantees, because there are a lot of people applying for the limited number of grant funds that are out there at this point in time. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just a little bit concerned about the fire hose repairs and sourcing of materials for that, or whether they can't be sourced, we have to replace them. Can I have an update on what's happening with those fire hoses?
Through the General Manager to the Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we haven't commenced actioning the solution as yet.
And just as a supplementary through the General Manager to the Director, I think the user groups also use the fire hoses to suppress dust. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillors, any other? I know. I think they've also found a temporary solution, or as in while we're looking to try and get them permanently fixed. So they are still available. Are just not what we'd like them to be. I think is the situation at this stage. Councillors, any other? If not, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Item number 7, the final item for tonight's meeting, the Draft Development Control Plan at 2026. We're that close to 2026 that by the time it's approved that we'll be there. Councillors, there are 4 recommendations there. Do I have a mover? Councillor Goswich and Councillor Newstead. Councillors, discussions about the Draft Development Control Plan. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was just one thing that was sort of highlighted to me in this matter, and it was very much when we've also got the other matter previous in the meeting regarding trying to encourage medical practitioners to our town. There was, and it is one of the amendments in Part C, in regarding parking, that when we've got health service facilities, there are 3 spaces per surgery room plus 1 space per staff member. It just appears to me to be a very large amount of parking to try and expect, especially when it looks at consulting rooms and things like that. It seems an exorbitant amount of parking to be required when we're trying to encourage medical practitioners and medical services in our town. I think that's something that we may need to look at when compared to some of the other parking requirements in other areas. It just doesn't seem to add up or mesh. That's just...
So through the General Manager to the Director of Planning, do you wish to comment at this stage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Scott. Look, it's a valid point. There is a document that used to be called, what's now called Transport for New South Wales as Guidelines for Transport Impacted Development, which some of this is based on, but of course that's not also as a horses for courses type thing too. We're talking about what might be good in a metropolitan area might not be the same for a small village, for example. My initial opinion is that what's in the DCP for exhibition purposes should stay, but during that process I'd be happy to have a look at it, do some comparisons, a bit of benchmarking to other areas and see if it needs to be adjusted for when it comes back.
And a question through the General Manager to the Director as a follow-on on that particular item or subject. With regard to changes, can councillors have, because I think there's a couple of things that are in here that we might want a little bit of a modification to, so we will have the opportunity as councillors to sit down and further discuss once it goes out in public exhibition?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely.
Thank you, Director. Sorry, I just needed that drink break. No, it's hay fever season, I think is my challenge. Councillors, any other questions or comments with regard to the DCP and the draft that's going out in public exhibition? If not, I strongly encourage the community as the Mayor to put in submissions on the changes on our DCP. This is your opportunity that only comes around every few years, where you can ask for potential changes to the DCP if you don't think that they meet the requirements. And it is a very large document, the DCP, so a lot of subparts to it. And yeah, there may be some extra additions that need to be put into it as well. So yeah, as in community input is very, very important. So please try and do it. And as we've said here, because of the Christmas break, that when it will go out in public exhibition. Do we have a date yet through the General Manager to the Director? If it's approved tonight?
Not as yet, Mr Mayor. We just got a few little tweaks we're going to have to fix up before we put it out.
So given Christmas is close, is there a possibility we may not go out till January with the exhibition, or are you just looking for extended period of time?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we'd like to get an exhibition, but also extend the period, because we recognise that the Christmas New Year period and also people go on holidays early January, we'd like to have a reasonable extension for those purposes.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions or comments? And councillors, you will be able to have discussions on the DCP if you find something that you'd like potentially to look at, to potentially modify on what's going out on public exhibition. Because all feedback from the community and councillors is very, very important before we pass the final DCP. Because as we heard tonight, while it's a guide, it can be used as a very strong guide on development applications. If no further discussion, councillors, and there is a division called for this because it is a planning item, councillors all in favour of the recommendations? Aye, so unanimous, no one against, so it was carried. Councillors, at the time of 7:13, I declare the November council meeting closed and welcome you back for the December council meeting in December. Thank you.